And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran? And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight, and maybe it'll end, and maybe it'll end very quickly.
A lot of things can be true at once. I don't think Iran should have a nuclear weapon. I am worried about the follow-on force that might happen if we blow up Iran and take out their capabilities. What does that mean? And I think there's a split now about how we handle this. What do you think?
Well, I think first we have to go back to the facts, which is President Trump has been clear even before his first term. This is actually something that if you go back to his comments that he made just as an American citizen, he's often said Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
All right, guys, good Thursday to you. We are, as always, on a glide path to the weekend. It is going to be absolutely disgusting here in your nation's capital. There's a reason we say it's the swamp, because it's gross. And July, August, and this year, actually late June, are equally disgusting. It's muggy, it's gross. Hopefully you are outside. No big parades this weekend to make it a little bit nicer. But I will say this, we're going to break down everything that's going on in Iran today with the panel. It's amazing. I feel like we're on a razor's edge. Are we going to war? Are we not going to war? Are we just going to bomb them? I don't know, but I'm going to break it all down. Plus, I want to get everyone's insight on which TC they're for. That's just a little hint. Which TC are you for? If you've been following me on social media, you know who I'm talking about. By the way, great content always coming out over the weekend. So if you don't already, please hit subscribe and the notification button. Tomorrow, an unbelievable discussion heading your way. And when I say that you're not going to hear this anywhere else, I'm pretty certain of that. I checked with ChatGPT. We're going to break down everything that's going on in Iran with the former National Security Advisor to President Trump, Ambassador Robert O'Brien. But here's where it's going to be different than everyone else. I want him to bring us inside the process. What is it like for President Trump to make a decision of this magnitude? Who's influencing him? What are the meetings like? How's it go in the Situation Room? I think that's, to me, a very interesting aspect of this discussion that's not being held, and he's probably the only one that can have that. Later in the next couple of weeks, James O'Keefe from Project Old, former Project Veritas, and who knows, maybe future Project Veritas, our buddy Dan Turntine, a guy named David Zwig has got an amazing book on COVID and the implications of it, and the owner of the LA Times, Dr. Patrick Sushing, he will be with us as well coming up in the next little while. So just do me a favor, hit that subscription button. Before we get into it with the panel, if you're a longtime watcher of the show, you know every night, and sometimes I literally get myself out of bed to take my Dream Beam powder. I have always had trouble falling asleep, staying asleep. Not anymore. I've added Dreams Beam powder to my routine. It is a massive, massive game changer. I literally take one scoop every night. I've tried the last couple nights. I've been on this one. This is the brownie battered flavor, and it literally is like dessert for me, but I have to wait and take it right before bed, because when you take it, you are literally 30 minutes away from having an amazing night's sleep. It's got all that natural stuff, melatonin, reishi, magnesium, L-theanine. So it's all natural. You fall asleep, you stay asleep, and you wake up rip-roaring ready to go. It is so, once you try it, it's not like addictive in the bad sense, but in the sense that, like, I love getting a good night's sleep. I literally, as I said, get out of bed if I missed it, because I've tried before to skip it, and you see the difference. Professionals, athletes, everyone are taking this now because it is such a game changer in the wellness routine. And it all comes down to a good night's sleep. Beam Stream Powder is how I have changed my routine for the better. Here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the Ultimate Patriot discount, 40% off, tariff-free. You can literally get the best night's sleep at an amazing discount. Start right now. Do one thing for yourself as you head into the weekend. Order Beam Stream Powder so that you can literally get on the path to wellness. 40% off for any of the flavors. I'm a huge fan of the cocoa cinnamon, but like I said, I'm on the brownie batter kick right now, so it doesn't matter. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at checkout. Shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer. Support a great American company and invest in yourself and a great night's sleep. All right. Lastly, you guys know this. We had this big parade last week. Oh, it felt like last year already because of everything that's happened, but it was actually just last weekend to start celebrating our nation's birthday. Last weekend kicked off the Army's 250th birthday. Don't forget the Navy is later this year. We got a big thing coming up. And then next year we head into the nation's 250. Well, Tax Network USA proudly is getting in the mood to celebrate our nation's birthday, honoring freedom, resilience, everything else. And to mark that anniversary, they're giving 10% off all of their products up through July 4th. So if you are one of those people and you know who you are, or you know people that fit into the bucket that they didn't file their taxes or they have back taxes, I've told you this before. Trust me, the IRS will find you. Washington needs money. That's how it works. So they will come after you, whether you owe like 5,000 or 5 million. If you have unfiled or back taxes, trust me, get ahead of the curve. Call the best people in the business. Those are the folks at Tax Network USA. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a preferred direct line in the IRS. So they know who to talk to, and they know that dude to stay away from that's always grumpy and never helpful. Yeah, they know it. They've been in business. They've gotten over $1 billion back for their clients. So do me a favor. If this is you, if I'm speaking to you or you know someone at work, a friend, a colleague, a family member, call the folks at Tax Network USA. It is 100% free to get the consultation, and you get 10% off between now and July 4th. So do this like a mid-year resolution for yourself or a friend. Take the first step. Give them a call, 1-800-958-1000, or better yet, go online, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. It's like Madonna. No spaces, one word. tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. One full word, no spaces, no nothing. And I spell Sean the right way. It's Irish. So it's tnusa.com/Sean Spicer. Help Tax Network celebrate. Give your friend or yourself a huge 10% off discount. Go to tnusa.com/Spicer. It is my privilege now to introduce our all-star panel, our good buddy at the Daily Signal, Rob Bluey. Rob, by the way, I want to get to, I brought you guys up last night in my testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee. We'll get to that in just a second. From the Daily Signal, Jessica Anderson, the president of the Sentinel Action Fund, and someone out there doing amazing work every day to make sure that we keep a majority in Congress so that Donald Trump can get the majority through, or still in action, the agenda through, rather, that is. And my longtime friend and brand new author, Alex Sawyer, who has got a brand new book out called Lawless Lawfare. What a perfect week to launch a book. Alex, I've said this in the past. Sometimes when it takes a while to write a book, then you got to get it through the publisher and print it and blah, blah, blah. Timing sometimes works against you, and sometimes it's on your side. It is on your side this week, Alex. Okay. Walk us through. Let's start off. We do winners and losers at the end, but you're the big winner this week. Tell me a little bit about what you bring in this book that people need to know about.
So watching and covering the 2024 election, it was really an election not on the campaign trail, but in the courtrooms. And as a lawyer and a reporter, it really troubled me. I had a group of law school friends that every time we saw a new lawsuit come down, we were chit-chatting. And, not everyone was a diehard Trump supporter in that group, but everyone recognized the political nature of the charges and what was being done in these courtrooms. So I thought, this deserves a book. It deserves coverage, and the media was very much lacking in how they covered it. That's something I dive into in the book. One crazy example I'll share with you was I looked at some of the Media Research Center's data. And when it came to the Georgia lawsuit with Fani Willis, ABC and CBS covered in April of 2024, 99 stories about that lawsuit. Never once mentioned Fani Willis was a Democrat, and she was running for re-election at the time. Like, how can
She's
you,
just a good person.
That's just journalistic malpractice. So, it's of course important to recognize that the district attorney coming after the Republican presidential candidate is a Democrat running for re-election, but somehow that was missing from all the coverage. And so throughout the book, there's tidbits like that in each of these cases that you'll find. Some great voices, Laura Trump, Don Jr., I talked to Steve Bannon, also John Eastman, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Everyone kind of shared with me their 2 cents and their own experience about what happened. And it even went all the way down to, I have some cases highlighted out of Texas, which is your average Trump supporters who got dinged by big law and Democrats under the Ku Klux Klan Act for their protesting techniques, that they said that they were interfering with the right to vote. And that they had to go to trial. It cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is just your average citizens.
I'm glad you exposed all this, because this is the kind of stuff that it just gets swept under the rug if we don't bring it to light. So congrats on the book. Congrats to bringing us all this to light. I do want to pivot to Iran, Jessica Anderson, because I feel like the media is trying to get into this big split among the MAGA movement. A lot of attention this week on this interview with Ted Cruz and Trump. I'll get to that in a second, but Trump had some comments on Tucker right now. Let me play you this, because I think this has sort of been what a lot of people are talking about. So let's take a look at what Trump had to say on Tucker.
And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran. And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight, and maybe it'll end, very quickly. But there's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, because the entire world will blow up. I'm not going to let that happen.
All right. So Jessica Anderson, like it's like a lot of things can be true at once. I don't think Iran should have a nuclear weapon. I am worried about the follow-on force that might happen if we blow up Iran and take out their capabilities. What does that mean? And I think there's a split now about how we handle this. What do you think?
Well, I think first we have to go back to the facts, which is President Trump has been clear even before his first term. This is actually something that if you go back to his comments that he made just as an American citizen, he's often said Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Well, now he's in a position to do something about that, sees an opening, and it's not like he's rushing to force. He tried diplomacy first. He gave them a deadline. They crossed that deadline. They crossed that red line. Now he's in this kind of fear, tactical, determined, what is it? You conceal to win and you reveal to deter, classic military thinking. So he's in the middle of this now, trying to show the force of the United States and get the Iranian regime to realize everything that's at stake. So I actually think the criticisms that Tucker has made the last, 5 days or so are pretty unfair of President Trump, because he's been so clear from the beginning of what his position was. Now, you can have a disagreement on what happens next, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, Sean. If we do take some sort of surgical airstrike or knock out their Air Force, well, what happens next to me is up to the people of Iran. That's not the United States to figure out. That's for them to figure out. But everything up to this point is for us to figure out. This is a regime that regularly chants death to America, death to Israel. That is our closest held ally for good reason. And President Trump is wise, I think, to see the moment in time, even after trying diplomacy, to then take this next step. And he's holding his commitment to not have an endless war close. So it's not like he's disregarded that in any way. He could have sent troops a week ago, and then we'd be having a very different conversation today. So I felt like the Tucker stuff, I just felt like it was silly and a distraction. And the reality is President Trump has been clear about this for really as long as he's been in the public domain.
Rob Bluey, I agree with Jessica. Like the president, two things. One, the president I know is doing everything he can to deter any kind of casualties, war, destruction. Like he wants to get them back to the table. He wants peace. But at some point, Jessica's right. If they can't do it, if the Iranians keep poking their finger in his eye, he's literally said they want to come see me, and they're saying, nope, we don't want to. Like at some point, you're like, dude, I've tried everything. And you threaten us, you've got a bomb. Like at some point, if we don't stand up to them, that's a problem too.
Sean, it's very clear that President Trump wants to protect American lives. Both, he takes it very seriously, his role as commander in chief, not wanting to put our troops in harm's way in the Middle East. But he's also very careful about, this position that Jessica articulated, that he does not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, which poses a threat to the United States and to Israel and other allies across the world. And so it's a difficult job. I think you saw this reflected in J.D. Vance's X post this week, where he was trying to balance this promise that the president has made to the American people, while at the same time making sure that we are doing our everything that we can as an administration to keep the American people safe. And I think what you see with Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz and Steve Bannon and others who have been very vocal on this issue, both sides of this debate, is you have a situation with Tucker Carlson who regrets some of the statements that he's made in the past when it came to the Iraq war. And so he's probably being more vocal and provocative in some of the the comments simply because he does not want to see the United States go down that path. At the same time, you've had Ted Cruz trying to articulate this position where he says he's not an isolationist, he's not an interventionist. There has to be some sort of middle ground. And so I think this debate that we're seeing, I would slightly disagree with Jessica. I don't necessarily think it's a distraction. I think it's a good thing that the American people are seeing leaders and other people who are clear stakeholders in this fight articulate their position so the American people can actually be subject to a conversation that we haven't unfortunately had in this country going back many, many decades.
Tucker Carlson is not, I mean, I like Tucker. I've watched his show for years, but Tucker has no skin in this game. And he has no skin in this game. He is not an elected official. He is not in a position to implement anything. And so there is a difference between with what President Trump says, what members of Congress, what senators, what House members say versus what Tucker Carlson says. And that distinction is important.
And I totally agree. I mean, look, but at the same time, he's influential. He's got a voice. He's got a platform. And so therefore he does have, like every American, he has a say. But Alex Sawyer, the thing that's interesting from the polling that I see publicly is that people say, should Iran be allowed to have a nuclear weapon? No, 100%.
No, right.
Should the American people, should we send our military force? No. And so it's like, if you're President Trump, and this is where I get it, like I keep saying the easy question, and I say this with all due respect to like the decision-making process and the consequences. The easy question is, can we drop a bomb? The answer is yes. So if his military advisors are going to him saying, hey, look, here's a plan to take out their nuclear capabilities. We've got these assets, these platforms with these munitions. We can drop them in this way. And the president says, good. Then the next question is, okay, then what happens next?
Right.
What is it? Regime change? Is it boots on the ground? Is it financial? Is Israel going to step up to the plate? Will they come after us? Will Iran attack the United States either through directly or through non-state actors, sleeper cells in the United States? What will China do? Is there going to be an economic impact because of the flow of oil? But like Alex Sawyer, this to me, it's like everyone wants to act like this is a very simple decision. And I don't think that they're giving the president credit enough for all of the consequences that come from one single action.
No. And the other thing to keep in mind is when we were talking about Tucker Carlson not having skin in the game, but the people who do, we're talking about lawmakers, intel officials are the ones that really have the information that the president needs to guide him in this process. At this point, with what all Israel has done on its own, I would be surprised not to see the U.S. step up in some sort of way. And while you talked about polls, and that might not be exactly what the American people want to see, this president, he's joked about 2028, but he said he's not planning to run again. He doesn't necessarily worry about what that means for his reelection chances, right? He's going to do what he thinks is best for national security purposes, for the country, not necessarily for himself in terms of would he be reelected.
Okay, so first question I have for you guys is this, and I just quickly, like I don't, because I want to move on a little, but like Jessica Anderson, if you said like not what you want, not like what Jessica Anderson believes, but do you believe, based on where we are in this discussion, that the United States is involved in supplying the weaponry to take out Iran's nuclear capability?
Yes.
Rob Bluey.
Is the United States involved today?
No. I mean, like, in other words, if you said, if we convene this panel again next Thursday, has the U.S., has President Trump greenlighted some military activity, either dropping a bomb or something else that is taking out their nuclear capability?
Yes, it appears that he's headed down that path, I think, simply for the reason that we've talked about. He's frustrated with the Iranians not coming to the table to negotiate.
Alex Sawyer, I think he's headed down the path. I don't know that there's a decision made. What do you think?
There might not be a decision made yet, but with the pressure ongoing, with Iran not coming to the table and continuing to launch missiles as they have nightly, I think that if we were to convene this, like you said, next week, that there would be a decision made. And I think it's almost all of us agree.
And the other piece,
go ahead, Jessica.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, Sean.
I was just going to say, I don't think the Ayatollah is just sticking his finger in Trump's eye and Trump is giving him an off-ramp about come to the negotiating table. Let's do this. And the Ayatollah is like, hey, well, he's not being very nice.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, Sean. The goal here that President Trump has articulated is unconditional surrender. And that goal for the Ayatollah, there's no way he can do that. He would rather die in a bunker than do that. So something's going to have to give. In one of these next periods of darkness, something is going to happen.
Look, here's my thing, and you guys can tell me, there seems to be this sense of black and white. If we drop this bomb, then we're responsible for everything. I don't think that's true.
I don't think that either. Yeah. You and I we've lived through this. Look, you know my husband. We did he did 2 tours in Afghanistan, 15 months, then 18 months. We had babies when he was gone. Like, I've lived the military wife and watched then Afghanistan crumble. And I think my generation of veterans knows better. And just because you do step 1 doesn't mean step 2 and 3 and 4 are getting ready to happen. Right. This is a military that understands sacrifice. The leaders that are in place right now are our peers. These are the leaders that my husband was a captain with, a second lieutenant with. Now they're in charge. And it is a different military than 15 years ago. So I hold to this. If President Trump is right, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, period. They refuse to cede to the table. They refuse to meet President Trump even halfway. They've crossed every diplomatic line possible. And so what happens next is on them. And then it's on the regime. And then what happens after military action, whether that's a surgical strike or a bomb, the decision of what happens to the people of Iran is up to the people of Iran. It's not up to us. And there is a distinction there. And I don't think we should assume step 1 automatically is step 2, like we would have seen 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and Sean, I think the other thing, and I heard Steve Bannon articulate this, President Trump obviously is dealing with a divided coalition among conservatives. I mean, we hear the debates playing out as we've talked about on this program right now. But at the same time, I think the American people deeply trust the president to make the right decision. As Alex said, he is the one who has the intel, and ultimately, I think he is a great communicator. He will be able to explain to the American people whether he decides to drop that bomb or whether he decides to pursue another tactic. Ultimately, I do think people will rally around him, as we've seen historically, that he will be in the best position among all of us in order to make what is best, the best decision for the American people in the long run.
Agreed.
Totally agree. All right, I want to just play a little clip because of Tucker and Ted Cruz going at this, but I want to come at it from a different angle. So just so the audience sees it, here's a quick snippet of the exchange between Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
Okay, so let's back out. Now, I want every one of us on this panel has had tremendous media experience. Alex is a reporter. Jessica's done a ton of interviews. Rob's in the game as well. I mean, so I want to look at it from this standpoint. Back when I started in campaigns and we were going into a debate or an interview, we'd say okay, we need to know the cost of a gallon of milk because you didn't want the gotcha question. Here's my point. And again, I'm friends with both people. I've known Tucker since high school. I've known Ted Cruz for a long time as well, not as well as I know Tucker, but I have a lot of respect for him as a debater, as a policy person, as a conservative, right? So was this fair? I look at what Tucker, I don't know that you need to know the population of Iran to decide that what they're doing. And again, as Jessica pointed out, it's not the people, it's the leadership. So whether it's a bomb isn't going to care whether there's 92 million or 112. And the back and forth, I guess the question I have with you, and Alex, you are a reporter, was that a fair interview?
I don't like when you are watching an interview and it becomes like a shouting match. I don't think that's productive for a reporter or an interviewee. And it's certainly not productive for the audience. I think it's more respectful if you allow your guest to answer the question and then maybe make the point that I think Tucker was getting at was when we're talking about bombing a country, what type of impact that could have on a civilian population and getting more into that. The point was, and I think he made it, I don't think in a very professional manner, was that it looked like Senator Cruz, there could have been more known about Iran or should be known more about Iran as we're talking about going to potential war. So I didn't like the style. I don't like that style, but I don't necessarily think those types of questions are unfair. Maybe just the manner in which it was asked.
Yeah, I think the tone. Jessica, what do you think?
I think that's a very measured reaction, Alex. I think that's good. I struggled with this, truly. I what was tough is I watched the clips first, which was such a mistake because then I was all riled up. And they sent the clips out little by little. And again, like this is probably the most I've ever talked about my husband, and he's going to kill me. But like my husband worked for Ted Cruz for 5 years. He did his military policy. Like Senator Cruz knows Israel.
Yes.
He knows Iran. He knows the Middle East. Like he does know. And the team he has around him now are so well versed on these issues in particular, peace through strength, what it looks like to have a firm position of the United States abroad. So it's really like the format and the tone and the strategic releasing on Tucker's parts to have those kind of clickbait, gotcha interview parts leaked and seeped out a whole day before you watch the whole thing. Well, I finally watched the whole interview last night. There are definitely moments of it that stuck out and are like, a little cringy. But I have to agree with Alex that I think it's the heart of the issue is, do you know enough to make a big decision? And thankfully, it's the decision. It comes down to one person, which is President Trump. And President Trump will know enough when he has to make the decision. And the Senate and the House is a body that will come alongside him. And each senator and each member of Congress has a staff that you better darn well know. Omri, who runs his foreign affairs, knows that there's 92 million people in Iran. He knows the ethnic differentiations on the ground. He knows what parts of the pockets of the country are, have young children in it. What parts of the day are better versus the periods of darkness. So there's a lot that was missed, I think, in this kind of debate. Both of them are also I like them both. I have massive respect for them both. I think that's obvious. We all do. But they both have smartest guy in the room syndrome. So, you get both of them in the room. And there's gonna be some swinging like this, especially on something like this. The last thing I'll say is this, and this is probably a little controversial, Shauna, so I don't want to get you in trouble. But
no, go. We need a clip.
Don't clip this. I'm going to get in trouble. President Trump had just said 24 hours prior that Tucker was irrelevant and that he wasn't on TV. Didn't he have some quote like that? Go back to mainstream.
He was kooky.
Yeah, he was kooky. Go back to a mainstream network. No one watches your show. And then Ted Cruz goes on and gives him the most views ever within 24 hours. And so that was just also that's just not lost on me. Sometimes Washington just gets silly, and both sides, even our side, just loves the theatrics of a debate. So I think at the end of the day, for me and my household, we go back to the facts. There was diplomacy was tried first. It was denied. Now it's fear and the goal of deterrent. What happens next is on the regime. This is not about the wonderful people of Iran, many of which do not chant death to America. Many of which, if you look at the pictures before the regime, looked Western. There was fashion. There was culture. Women weren't covered up in the garb. That was a different time. And so what happens next? It's up to the people for them to decide what kind of leader and what kind of government they want to rule them.
I think on that point, that's sometimes I think what is intimidating to people. My husband's Iranian. He was born there and lived there for a period of time during the revolution. And while the Shah, there was issues they had with the Shah, but what came next was worse. And I think that that's one of the things people look at is, if the goal is regime change, which a lot of people, given our past recent history, are shy about, is then what could replace this regime? Could it be worse? And I think that that's a lot of questions Iranians are asking themselves.
Yeah, we're halfway through the show, and Alex Sawyer drops the bomb. Oh yeah, I've got some insight that no one else has. It's like I have some expertise.
I don't have any military insight, just from my husband's family.
No, I know, but that's awesome.
Yeah, he was born there. They came here. They went back to visit a grandma and got stuck during the revolution. So lived through that, and then eventually got back here. Actually, to hear him tell the story that smuggled through a British plane back to America.
Wow.
And it's just many of them feel that way. I think it's hard, though, for Iranians, American Iranians. They're split. Like, they don't like to see the regime, but they also don't want to see their home country destroyed.
Yeah.
So it's, it's an emotional, situation for them to be in. And then the thought of, could whoever is the next government to take power, if that's where this goes, would it be worse?
Rob Bluey, the one thing that Jessica brought up that I just want to throw to you before we move on is Ted Cruz is a very smart guy, right? You don't have to like him, you don't have to whatever, but there's no question he's a very smart man. And I didn't like the accusation of you don't know. Like, to me, it was like there's a great philosophical discussion that we can have about whether it makes sense, whether we are prepared, all that kind of stuff. But to accuse people of not being aware of like what's the situation, I thought was unnecessary.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, you're in this business as well as Tucker, and Jessica made the point about the theatrics. I mean, I think that what we saw in the clips was a small sampling of the full 2-hour interview. For those who've watched the full show and the full episode, they saw a maybe different version. There was obviously a lot of substance that they talked about over the course of those 2 hours, and then you obviously had those clips that they were highlighting. In a way, I mean, I think it benefits both Ted Cruz, who was making an argument, a very pro-Israel argument, and it benefits Tucker because he gets a lot of views and maybe more subscribers to his show. And at the end of the day, yes, I agree with Jessica. Ted Cruz obviously is a very smart man. He knows that there's a lot of weight on his shoulders in terms of a decision that he's going to ultimately have to make as a lawmaker. And Tucker's in the business of obviously creating entertainment and a good debate. And so probably, yes, a little bit unfair to Cruz to pull out a few of those clips. But I will say this, again, I'll go back to a point I made earlier. I do think that it's a good thing that we're having these conversations and debates. And for consumers who probably wouldn't see this on network or cable television, to be able to tune into a platform like your show, Sean, or Tucker's or others, where now, as at least compared to the Iraq War, there was no conversation like this taking place.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
It's a good positive about alternative media for sure.
100%. All right. I want to quickly turn to the hearing that I testified at yesterday in the Senate. Here's what I thought was fascinating. So I go to testify in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee about Biden's decline. My role was to talk about how the media covered Trump versus how they covered Biden, which obviously was vastly different. What I thought was fascinating, what I want to focus on, though, is the strategy of the Democrats. So here they are. They walk in. Durbin shows a video, the ranking member, Dick Durbin from Illinois, and then leaves. Peter Welsh, a Democrat from Vermont, made an opening rant, like a word salad, and then left. And then all their staff left. And I honestly, guys, strategically, I can say this now because the hearing's over. I had murder boarded this out. Like, if Senator so-and-so comes after you, here's what you say. It was myself, a professor, and someone else from Trump's administration who worked in the Domestic Policy Council for Stephen Miller. And what I found fascinating was Democrats didn't even try to turn the tables and fight back. Like, I can say this now, again, because it's over. If I were them, I would have said, oh, really, Sean Spicer? You want to talk about decision-making? Here's 10 decisions that President Trump made. Were you aware of these? What do you think about his outcome on this? Was this a smart decision? I mean, they should have come after us like spider monkeys. And they ceded the floor. And I believe, Alex Sawyer, that it's a bigger strategic issue with Democrats right now. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know how to fight.
Yes. And one of the big points to come back at them with is, well, you pulled him. You pulled him as your candidate after that July debate. And the idea was, because he looked lost. The American people saw his mental capacity there. And so, it's hard for them to defend that, no, everything was fine, when the American people saw what they saw. And as a result, he was no longer the presidential candidate.
The reason I bring this up, Jessica Anderson, is you guys at the Sentinel Action Fund, you go out there, you're registering voters, you're doing all this stuff. And I had Seth Keshel on the show the other day. 29 of 30 states that look at voter registration by party identification are going Republican. And the one state that's not is New Jersey, and they just don't have it in yet. But this, between their strategy and the results that we're seeing on the ground, I don't mean to get cocky, but this does not look good for Democrats.
Yeah, it's funny because I was actually shocked that they didn't show up, because it would have been a great opportunity for them to go after Jake Tapper. Like, they could have used the platform to just shift their entire narrative, but instead they ran away from a difficult conversation. And I think it's another reason why it's so important when we look at these midterms that Republicans have to retain majorities in Congress, both the House and the Senate. They have a super powerful oversight role. And that is especially important when it comes to getting to the bottom of who was in charge of the Biden administration, the Hunter Biden stuff. You saw Kash Patel came out this last, 2 days ago. It's lost in all the news of the week, but 2 days ago with insights on the 2020 election. So there is going to be a systematic role for oversight for the Senate Judiciary by Chairman Cornyn. And I think the mainstream media doesn't really know what to do with this story of Biden, just like Democrats don't really know what to do, because they know what happened.
Right.
They know that the autopen was working overtime. And Sean, you and I both served in Trump's first administration. We know firsthand, the president doesn't make a decision without paper. So
God. No. And that's what came out of that hearing yesterday. Yeah. Show us the paper trail. There's a decision memo from every decision where he says concur, no, or concur with comments, or decline. Like, They need to show me the money. Show us the paper trail, boys and girls. Yeah.
And
show us the paper.
And it is customary. It is not unique to just the Biden administration. Trump does that now. Every single president, probably in modern day for the last 50 years, has that. They have a paper trail for every policy decision, staff sec, OMB, legislative review division, all of that. So they could have gone on offense, flipped the script, brought all the paper in and been like, no, our guy was doing just fine, end of discussion. They can't do that because they know the autopen was working overtime. They know that Jake Tapper is probably right in his premise that the president was basically asleep for 2.5, 3 years. And they know what they did, which is that they had their own regime change and pushed him out to bring way for Kamala Harris, the token queen, to take the mantle. The no kings thing just cracks me up. It's the irony of the left right now is it's just next level hypocrisy.
And Jake Tapper had his epiphany, after the election.
Oh, yeah.
Right after he got his advance.
He's literally sitting in his diary in the back of the White House press corps, writing all of this stuff down instead of properly asking.
2025, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, truly, no one should take him serious as a journalist ever again. I'm not sure anyone did in the first place, but certainly never again. So I'm glad you were there, Sean, the voice of reason. Was proud to see you up there testifying. That was good.
Rob Bluey, I have to bring up one thing, point of personal privilege on this show, because the knuckleheads, and I'm being nice because it's a family-friendly show, in the Rhode Island state legislature approved yesterday the state's $13.9 billion budget, according to my buddies over at Newport Buzz, by a vote of 66-9. And the geniuses included what they're calling the Taylor Swift tax in the Rhode Island state budget. This is now targets non-owner occupied residential properties that are not used as a primary resident for at least 183 days a year. These properties would be subject to an annual surcharge of $2.50 per $500 of the assessed value above the first million. So, for example, $3 million, a second home would face a $10,000 annual fee. Taylor Swift does own a house in Watch Hill, Rhode Island, so she will see an additional tax of $136,000 a year if this moves forward. I say this selfishly. I have a second home. I live in Rhode Island. But to me, this is just bad policy. Like the idea of them figuring out like people who come, because here's the issue. At a certain point, and a lot of properties in Rhode Island, especially those on the water. Obviously, not everyone's Taylor Swift, but if you bought a house 5 years ago, 10 years ago, much like the Washington, D.C. area, it's increased in value. And suddenly you're going to go, okay, now I've got to sell it. This is, again, Dems just don't know when bad policy after, and I get that it sounds great because it's the Taylor Swift tax. It might sound good and everyone goes, oh, she's got billions. But for a lot of people now, a house that was worth $500,000 a couple of years ago is now worth $1 million.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, it has a populist ring to it, as you indicated. But I think this is why we've seen the exodus from these Democrat-led states to places like Texas and Florida, where there are lower taxes, there's more freedom. You don't necessarily have these onerous government regulations and high costs of living. And certainly Rhode Island seems to be going down a path in the opposite direction, where probably people are going to look and say, Jesus, what's the cost benefit of having a second home there?
But it's so hot here, Rob. It's so hot.
Sean's on his way up there. As soon as we finish the show, he's on his way back up.
Well, we're getting close. All right. I want to end with something a little light before we get into winners and losers. I traveled a decent amount, not as much as I used to. I think all of us probably get on a plane from time to time. There was a clip that came out. The New York Post, I think, pointed it out, of this woman who got on a plane and decided to have a little meal on the plane. Let me show it to you if I can. All right, so this is her making an entire egg salad dinner on a plane, and apparently it didn't go over too well with fellow travelers. So, Alex, I mean, I don't know how much you're traveling. You've just got a brand new book out, so maybe you're doing some book events. But like, I just think from a travel etiquette standpoint, like that's a no-no.
Yeah. I mean, kudos for her for trying to be healthy, I guess, over a lot of the other options at the airport. But yeah, why not just make it and bring it already made where you just have to open it?
I don't even know that I want that made. I don't know that I want that made.
Quite a lot of steps.
Did she wash her hands?
I love that that's where Jessica Anderson goes.
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Like, planes are gross. Like, she's like licking her fingers like, ugh.
I've never understood really eating on a plane unless you really have to, you know?
Well, I get the snack, right? The pretzels, the peanuts.
Yeah, that's one
although
thing.
apparently you can't have peanuts anymore.
You
either.
know?
But if you are going to do it, at least, have something that's not as extravagant as that egg salad. I mean, maybe a small sandwich or something, Sean, but that was just crazy.
Right.
The problem with the egg salad is it smells.
That's what I'm getting at. Right. You've got to be polite about this.
Right. Like egg salad, tuna, not okay.
Right. Okay. I want to do what we do every week, but I want to start real quick. We don't have a ton of time. I'm going to let Alex go last because she's new to the show. Rob Bluey, who's your winner and loser of the week?
Yeah, absolutely. So Supreme Court delivered a big decision. So my big winner is Jonathan Skrmetti, who's the Attorney General of Tennessee, who brought the case. And obviously, this is a great day for those children who were facing this genital mutilation and indoctrination into transgender. As far as my loser, I'm going to go with the folks at NewsGuard, who once again drew the ire of the Florida legislature, which passed a budget this week, which is going to Governor DeSantis's desk, which prohibits the state of Florida from spending any money on these media monitors who are trying to censor outlets like ours and yours.
Fantastic. Jessica Anderson, give me a winner and a loser, please.
All right. I had to think about this because there were a lot of losers this week.
I know.
It's a hard week to choose. My loser is California Senator Alex Padilla, who I have to be honest, it took me like a quick Google search to figure out if he was a state senator or a U.S. senator, because I literally never heard of the guy. But now I know his name. Now I know he's a U.S. senator from California after his incredibly bizarre publicity stunt fail in L.A. And then he got drowned out by the actual news of the week that we spent all day talking about today. And then he goes to the Senate floor and starts fake crying. So
he's going to be up for an Emmy. Who's your winner?
Loser. Okay, so my winner is actually a little bit cribbing off of Rob. My winner is the whole state of Tennessee. Two big things happened from Tennessee this week. You have U.S. Senator Bill Hagerty from the state of Tennessee that had his landmark crypto stablecoin bill pass the Senate. It's a bipartisan bill, potentially the only big bipartisan bill of this Congress. The president came out in support. He hails from Tennessee. We're really excited to see the Genius Act passed. And then, as Rob said, the Supreme Court just upheld the Tennessee ban on so-called transgender care. And so two big things out of the state of Tennessee, and they're my big winner for the week.
Awesome. Alex Sawyer, lead with your loser, because my
loser would need to be the Iran supreme leader. I think his days are numbered. No matter what way you look at it, that writing is on the wall there. I believe the winner. I have to be self-serving and say it's my book.
Wallace Lawfare.
Out there that it's finally out. Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can get it online. It was a work of passion. It's the courts and journalism are something I really care about. Yep. And so I poured my heart into it. And I hope anyone who's concerned about the direction of politics and really usurping our court system for political gain takes a look at it and reads it and really understands the danger of the separation of powers here.
Well, what excites me is that, to your point, you've been reporting on this stuff for a long time. You are someone that people go to as an expert on this. So like when you write this book, to me, it's bringing a level of expertise that most people don't have. And so you're bringing not just the subjects, but your insight. And I love that. So I'm excited for Lawless Lawfare. Look, my winner this week is patriotism. Come off the heels of this Army 250 event, which I think was amazing. And then President Trump this week, unfortunately didn't get the coverage that he did, but he planted this new flag on the White House lawn. It's awesome. It's amazing for everyone now to see. My loser, and I'm with Jessica, there was a lot to choose from. I had a bunch. But unfortunately, I have to go with Mr. James Acosta. Take a look.
I got a question, though. Where are the ICE raids at the Trump properties?
Yes.
Can somebody call ICE on the Trump golf course in Virginia?
Yes,
You're telling me there's nobody in there that is undocumented or has some kind of squirreliness going on with their paperwork? Give me a break. Hey, how many immigrants has he married? He's got one buried at his golf course in New Jersey. Isn't she buried by the first hole or the second tee or something like that?
The first hole, yeah, it's the first hole.
Immigrants always doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do.
As you can see, they even are so leftist. They go, dude, that's why you got fired on CNN. I mean, it was unbelievable. He can't sell out events, but he just doesn't know how far he's gone and how stupid and silly and ridiculous he looks. And I'm glad the White House called him out for that. Again, thank you guys for being here. I'm excited for the weekend, hopefully. Alex, congratulations on the book. We will put the links in the show and push it out. Thanks again for being here, everybody. Again, tomorrow, former National Security Robert O'Brien will be here to break down all of the process in President Trump's decision-making. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.